Alright, welcome to the channel. I have for you today 3 reports from Canada. Without giving away too much, one of the reports is of a creature acting in a way you've probably never heard of before. The second one, the creature reminds the witness of something he saw in a movie. And the third one, well, you saw the thumbnail. If you're new to the channel and you like these kind of videos, you might as well hit the subscribe button right now. I give you these encounters and I show you the locations. Alright, let's go ahead and get into them. August 1978. The sighting occurred along the Yukon River, just outside of Whitehorse, Yukon, just off a gravel road near a small power substation, in a large grassy field skirted by aspen and pine trees. I was only 15 at the time, visiting my father over the summer vacation in Whitehorse, Yukon Territory, Canada. My folks were divorced, and my dad was a helicopter pilot for Trans-North Turbo Air in Whitehorse. That summer, I had read the book Sasquatch by Don Hunter and Renee DeHindren, and had always had a fascination with the subject. I'm not sure if I had a heightened sensitivity to Bigfoot, but I certainly wasn't expecting what happened that day. I was an avid fisherman, catching several grayling each day from what turned out to be my favorite fishing spot. That day, which is forever burned in my mind, I was walking on a gravel road in a northeasterly direction, roughly paralleling the Yukon River. I was on the east side of the river. As usual, I approached a small, light blue power or utility shed, roughly 10 foot square by 8 foot tall. I turned west towards the river to fish at a spot that was riddled with large concrete boulders. My line of sight was completely blocked by the shed as I turned towards the river. The next moment, I will always remember. I was absolutely terrified at what I saw next. A tall, dark, rather thin figure standing about 200 feet near a large stand of trees, 45 degrees off to my right. When I say I was terrified, I'm now 42 years old and can honestly say I've never been so completely scared in my life, including almost being killed by a car falling off a hoist and missing me by 2 to 3 inches. My body instantly said, "Get the blank out of here now." I immediately backtracked a couple steps and hid behind the shed, in absolute fear that it had saw me and I was in harm's way. I was actually about 15 minutes run from civilization, so that shed represented the only thing between me and it. Anyway, my instinct was to ever so gently peek around the corner to see if I was spotted. Luckily, it never saw me. That's when things got really interesting. At least that's what I say now in hindsight. At the time, I was a basket case. What I saw was this Bigfoot, or someone in a hairy suit, jumping or dancing excitedly around an aspen tree. It was kind of prancing or hopping, with its legs about shoulder width apart. Its arms were flailing around. It made no sound. Then it went up to the tree and evidently tried to lift itself up from the ground from a large branch at about shoulder height. As it tried to lift itself up, the branch actually broke with a loud snap. That's when 2 things happened. 1, I knew this was no dream. I actually heard the snap loud and clear, although I can't honestly say I saw it fall completely to the ground. 2, I wasn't about to stand around and watch anymore, so I backed away from my hiding spot and carefully made sure the shed was between myself and whatever the hell it was. And I hightailed it out of there as fast as a 15-year-old can run, with my fishing rod and tackle box in hand. I mentioned it to my friends and family in the next few days, but it was mostly discarded as nonsense. A few days later, something I will always regret waiting, I went back with a friend and looked for the broken branch or any footprints. Unfortunately, we were not able to find any. I've thought very long and hard about the whole thing, and I remember at the time that this was simply unbelievable, and what I had witnessed was extremely special. I've since read just about every book on the subject. I wish I could go back and be more critical of what had occurred. It haunts me to this day. I've told my story to a few people, but mostly don't bother telling anyone. Not because I'm embarrassed, but because most people are just ignorant of the subject. I am now a VP of an IT professional services firm, married and have 3 children. I firmly stand behind this story. Either someone was playing a prank or I saw a Bigfoot doing some sort of ritualistic ceremony that day in Whitehorse, Yukon. Alright, here's the follow-up investigative report. The sighting took place in late August 1978 in the southern part of the Yukon River, about 6 kilometers from Whitehorse, Yukon. I found the witness to be very credible and well-spoken. He explained to me that although it happened a long time ago, he still remembers what he saw, and he is sure that what he saw that morning was an actual Sasquatch. The witness, who was by himself, was fishing in the early morning, something he did frequently when visiting his father, who worked for Trans-North Turbo in Whitehorse, Yukon. That morning, the witness was strolling down the Yukon River when suddenly he saw a Sasquatch which appeared to be about 200 feet in front of him. The witness immediately hid behind a shack and observed a tall bipedal ape-like creature perform what the observer refers to as a dance. The creature was noted as being very excited at something, and after this dance, he went on trying to lift itself onto an aspen tree. After snapping the branch and falling on its rear, the witness quickly ran from the scene. The witness was not able to deduce the exact height, weight, and sex of the object, but noted that it was black in color and was of a thinner build with long arms and being top-heavy with a hunched back. The sighting lasted approximately 5 to 10 seconds, and the weather was noted as being a slight overcast and a light drizzly rain. The witness also stated he regrets leaving so quickly because he believes he could have watched it for even longer. But because he had no idea of what was happening, his initial reaction was to leave immediately. July 1986, Ontario, Canada. In 1986, I had just graduated college and I needed a big break, so I took a job as a fishing guide for a fly-in fishing lodge. At the time, it was called Keamawun Lodge, later to be renamed Peace Island Lodge. The lodge has since gone bankrupt, and to my knowledge, nobody has purchased it. It was located on Deer Lake, just inside the Ontario border and about 500 miles north of the United States-Canadian border. We had a young couple on their honeymoon from Chicago. They had an Aboriginal guide named Arthur. Arthur does not usually guide, but we were so busy we hired him for the week. After 3 days, the couple were very disappointed with the fishing and were planning on leaving early. They did not like Arthur. I started taking them out after dinner to some hot walleye and pike fishing spots. Deer Lake is the headwaters for the Cobham River, which eventually runs into Hudson's Bay. On the southwest end of the lake, there is a large, narrow water passage, which reaches a place the Aboriginals call Quick. This is a very narrow section of the lake where you first start to see current, which eventually turns into the Cobham River. Quick is basically 2 smooth jets of bare Precambrian rock that almost touch each other. Thus, it gets so narrow you can see the current of the water. This area is clear of trees and brush because winter ice expands over the area and cleans it off every winter. As a result, you can see clearly anything on either side of the water, and it's clean for about 20 feet on each side before you go into tall pine trees. I was trolling slowly towards Quick. I came around the corner and saw a large black animal standing over 7 foot tall, run and jumped across Quick and into the bush on the other side. It was black like a black bear. The first thing I thought of was it was a big 1,000-pound black bear running on its hind legs to escape wolves or something. It did surprise me to say the least. I told my fishing customers what I just saw, and they heard the rustling and the branches breaking in the forest, and then the animal reached a distance where we could not hear it anymore. I continued towards Quick and started thinking. It had long arms that swung more like a human than a bear. When wolves were chasing something, they make a hell of a racket, and we did not see or hear any wolves. Also, a 1,000-pound black bear is extremely rare, even down south where there are lots of food. There is not enough food that far north for a black bear to get that big. Bears in that area rarely exceed 250 pounds. A black bear would not be surprised or panicked like that. A bear would just take a look at you and run into the bush on all fours. Besides, it's Alaskan brown bears that stand, not black bears. Black bears do not run 30 miles per hour on their hind legs and jump 7 feet to another rock. They would just plow through the water. This animal moved quickly. For a long time, we joked about my Bigfoot encounter. Please don't laugh, but a few years later, I experienced a kind of post-traumatic stress syndrome. We went to see the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Predator. When the guy in the Predator costume ran and jumped while chasing Arnold, it brought back sheer terror in me. The creature in that film ran and jumps in almost the exact same motion as the big black animal I saw in 1986. He was around the same height as well. I did see something extremely unusual, and I finally started believing that I did see a Sasquatch. I went back to work at the lodge again in 1993. I had gone back to college for computer science, and I needed to work during the summer. I did not see the creature again, but I did talk to the Aboriginal guides, the Cree Indians, who live on the lake, and they all know of the creature, and they are terrified of it. They call it Wendigo, which under traditional native folklore is a spirit of the forest that can change shape into different animals. Whatever they believe, I am faced with believing that I did see a Sasquatch. And here's the follow-up investigative report. The sighting occurred in the first week of July 1986. The weather was clear. Ample ambient light provided the witness with a clear view of the surrounding landscape and subsequent sighting. As the witness rounded a corner in the waterway, he spotted what at first he thought was a bear, approximately 35 yards away. He was able to observe the creature for about 3 seconds. He shut the 20 horsepower engine off on the boat as the sighting was occurring. Shutting down the engine allowed him to hear the rustling in the pines as the creature moved out of sight. Witness felt that it was exiting the area hastily to get out of sight, as opposed to casually strolling away unconcerned. The sheer mass of the creature was a surprise to the witness. It appeared to be no less than 7 foot in height, stocky and muscular, with the weight estimated at 700 to 1,000 pounds. The chest and torso appeared thick, and no waistline was noted. It moved quickly on 2 legs, but not gracefully. The fur was similar in appearance, color, and texture to a black bear. As noted in the reports, because the creature moved sideways away from the witness, no frontal facial features were discernible. Witness was able to view it from the side and stated that it definitely did not have a snout, as seen on a bear. It seemed to move as a large human would, only slightly stooped as its arms swung. One unusual characteristic of its gait was the lack of flexation at the knee. Witness stated that the knees weren't bending as it ran. May 1966, Spillimachine, British Columbia. I have a BS Geology degree from the New Mexico Institute of Mining and Technology, 1961. And in 1965, I was a plant manager for a remote plant owned by NL Industries Incorporated, located about 7 miles northwest of Spillimachine, British Columbia, on a public road. Since I was a young man at the time, and having only worked for the firm for a little more than a year, I was reluctant to make my finding public. Now that I am retired, I no longer have such feelings. On an early May 1965 drive, I drove up the road from the mill site on a grizzly hunt. About a half mile above the mill site, there is a small clearing of about an acre on the east bank of the Spillimachine River. Just north of this clearing, the road makes a dog-leg left, and there is a road cut on the right side of the road about 4 foot high. The first time I noticed something, I found a line of footprints that were coming from the direction of the Columbia River Bridge in a northeast direction. The second time I came to the clearing from the north on foot and came upon these creatures I thought were grizzly bears, but they were upright and were scuffling. 2 began mating in the normal human fashion instead of from the rear. I was about 100 yards from them, and I took a shot at one with a rifle, but missed, and the 3 ran into the woods to the east. Alright, here's the follow-up investigative report. This one has a lot more information. The footprints were seen in 1965 and were barefoot humanoid prints, bigger than a size 10 shoe, with a stride length of 3 to 4 feet. The witness had to jump from one print to the next when attempting to duplicate the stride. The prints were pointed straight ahead and were in a straight path, suggesting that the animal making these prints knew exactly where it was going. They came from the direction of the town of Spillimachine, approximately population 50, and headed off into the wilderness. It was in the same place that the witness's sighting of these 3 Bigfoot took place a year later in 1965. 66. The witness was hunting grizzly bear. He had parked his vehicle on the side of the road and was walking up the road when, in a clearing off to the side, he glimpsed for just a few seconds 3 gaunt-looking brown hair-covered animals at a distance of about 35 to 40 feet. The animals appeared to be wrestling with each other as they moved in a direction away from the witness. Believing the animals to be bears and afraid of being spotted by them, the witness immediately ran across the road and climbed a steep 4-foot embankment, where he found a log that he could drop down behind and hide. By this time, the animals had moved off to a distance of approximately 150 feet. And as the witness watched them continue to scuffle as they moved further away, he could tell that one animal appeared to be asserting authority over the other 2. After they had moved away to the edge of the clearing at a distance of about 300 feet, the assertive animal began copulating with one of them, with the third standing and moving around them about 10 feet away. The animal on the ground laid on his back with his legs flat on the ground. The other was on top in a face-to-face position. At this point, the witness still believed the animals to be bears. After the 2 had been copulating on the ground for about a minute, the one standing stopped moving around, so the witness took a shot at it. He missed his shot, and the animals ran into the tree line, each of them running on 2 legs. At this point, the witness still believed the animals to be bears. The witness did not believe these animals were anything but bears until a year later, when he actually killed a grizzly bear, and then realized that what he had seen a year earlier were definitely not bears. Alright, there it is. If you guys liked the video, make sure you hit that like button for me. Leave me some comments, let me know what you thought about the encounters. And if you're new, you might as well go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. What are you waiting for? If you guys like these kind of videos, you can hit this playlist right here. Alright, that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it. Always remember, where there is a Willstar, there is definitely a way. Willstar out.